It is just an extreme honor for me today to be podcast interviewing my mentor, my idol, Dr. Woody Oakes, and his partner, Steve Parker. Woody's the founder of Excellence in Dentistry, has been serving dentistry for 30 years. Excellence in Dentistry publishes the Profitable Dentist magazine, provides educational products, and conducts 2 national seminars each year. Woody's idol was Early Step from Texas, and who's I guess retired to a farm and has bought big equipment and spends all day driving around like a toy truck.
Right.
And my gosh, and Woody is single-handedly responsible for my lecturing career. It was way back in the day, and Woody attended my seminar that I put on myself in a hotel, and he gave me a 5-star rating, a raving review in his Profitable Dentist magazine, which went to tens of thousands of dentists all over America. And the minute you published that, man, I was getting speaking engagements from everywhere. Woody, thanks so much for all you did for me back then. How are you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. Just trying to stay busy.
What's new in your world?
Not a whole lot. Just trying to help out Steve a little bit, in the transition, and trying to figure out what I'm going to do the rest of my life.
Are you still in New Albany?
I am. Just moved into a new condo, and that was quite, moving from a house to a condo has been quite an experience.
Yeah, but it's nice. You don't have any yard work. You don't have to worry about so much of that crap. Minimalization is the key to lowering your stress.
Oh, yeah. Have you done that yet?
No, I got 4 boys, and they all moved out, but one by one, 3 of them have come back and left, and so they're in out. So I'm not gonna do it till they're all married with children and out. But then I still don't want to do it because I'm 3 miles from my office. I love my house, and then I have their original bedrooms. So when they come back for Christmas and Easter and Hanukkah and all that stuff, Thanksgiving. So I don't know. I probably won't. And then the other thing is, every time I've gone to sell my house, I start looking at other ones, by my office,
right.
and everything that I want to buy is 3 times more expensive. So I just think,
stay where you're at, huh?
So I think I'm just going to stay where I'm at. I've told my team whenever I talk about selling my house, just to talk me out of it, because it's a huge waste of time. So you got a rocking hot big meeting tomorrow in Destin, Florida.
Yeah, and it's actually going to be in Orlando this year.
Oh, it's in Orlando.
Yeah, and Steve wanted me to talk a little bit about, kind of the beginning of the seminar and how it got going. If you can imagine, Howard, back in the day, we started out with a 16-page newsletter that was called Nationwide Dental Newsletter. Then it went to become the Profitable Dentist. And back then, before the internet, you could charge for stuff like that. And at the time, there were 100,000 dentists in the country. There's more than that now. And we had 12,000 of them as paid subscribers. So $147 a year for 1 year and $247 a year for a 2-year. We had basically 12% of the dental community got that newsletter every month. And kind of the way the seminars got started, my partner in the newsletter was a dentist named Travis McPhee. Don't know if you remember Travis or not.
Of course I do, in Oregon.
Yeah. And we were talking one Sunday, and there was snow on the ground here and snow on the ground there, and we said, you know what? We need to find a way to get out of this place and get to some warm weather. And both of us kind of spontaneously said, we need to have a seminar in someplace warm. And neither one of us had ever done a seminar. And we thought, well, we'll just get, 3 or 4 dentists, and we'll go down there and we'll call it a seminar and, get that to pay for our vacation. Well, to show you how things have changed, we put one little notice in the newsletter. And Howard, we had, I think you were at the first or the second.
Yeah, I think I was the first one.
Yeah, and there were 700 people there for one little bitty ad in the newsletter. And, how that's changed so much. But, that's kind of how the mega dental seminars got started. And we had 7 people People you know, Rick Kushner, Kathy Jameson, the Duffins, who were all, a big deal back then. And the first time Travis and I had ever met in person was down at Sandusky Resort. And we walked in, and I said, Travis, I said, you're fatter than I thought you'd be. And he said, oh, you're taller than I thought you'd be. So that was our first conversation. We had never done a seminar in our lives. And so we had to wing the first seminar totally, as far as AV and how to introduce the speakers. And back then we videotaped everything. We sold the videos. And it just kind of, grew like crazy since then. And at the time, we were the only dental seminar, live seminar out there, except for the ones that the ADA did, which were, as you remember, super boring. So is that kind of the way you remember the first seminar?
Oh yeah, those and Rick Kirshner is still all that in a bag of chips. I've been trying to get him to come on my podcast. I lectured with Kathy Jameson in Oklahoma last Thursday.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and she's still all that, and her husband John. Yeah, that was just amazing. The funniest thing I remember is when you and Travis wanted to do a skit where you guys went out there, and me and another guy. What was his name?
Todd Vogel.
Todd Vogel. I still have the picture. It's so hilarious. We overdid the joke. We were going to pretend we were women, so we got in a bathing suit and put a wig on. But your girls put so much damn makeup on me, they actually just thought we were both just two ugly chicks. No one knew it was me and Todd. And so the joke bombed just because they didn't know it was me. In fact, when I was going up and telling people, I said, did you think that was funny? They'd take like a second look and say, Howard? Do you remember that?
Yeah, we put that picture on the cover of the the magazine actually at that time.
Oh my gosh! Do you still got a picture of that?
I do.
Well, send me take a picture of that with your iPhone and send it to me because that is just hilarious. When's the last time you talked to Travis?
Oh, it's been a long time. He's retired now. He ended up just doing a denture practice. He found out he could make more money doing dentures up in Oregon, and but it's been probably 10 years.
Wow, we should get him. We should follow up this show with Travis.
Oh, I know.
And so talk about your inspiration from Earl Estep. What did Earl Estep mean to you with his newsletter Country Gold?
Yeah, of course they called him Earl the Pearl, and I had been out of dental school 6 or 7 years, and things were not going well, financially. And I'll tell you a little story to illustrate, how bad it was, and I hope I don't offend any hygienists that might be on the call, but I was not making a lot of money. I was just paying bills, and that was it. And I was dating this hygienist named Beverly, beautiful girl, but she needed or wanted a boob job. And she came to me and said, would you pay for a boob job? And I said, well, Beverly, money's really tight right now. Could we do one now and another one 3 months later? And she didn't think that was funny. So that was kind of the end of that. But I was just kind of gasping to, find a way to start making money in dentistry. And so I get this sales letter from this guy in Athens, Texas, named Earl Estep. And I read this thing, and I was just really, really blown away with what he said. And the seminar was going to be in Memphis, Tennessee. And as many of you who have been following the Profit Dentist know, I had a 61 Volkswagen with the hole in the floorboard, and I decided I was going to drive to Memphis and hear Earl. Well, I couldn't afford the tuition to the course, and so I called Earl and basically talked him into letting me come for free. And then I couldn't afford a hotel, and as Earl says, I ended up in the red light district as far as hotels, but it was a place to stay. And I was, this guy walks out in the morning, like at 8 a.m., and he puts a 6-pack of Coors Light on the podium. And he also has a cowbell. And he starts drinking at, 8 o'clock in the morning. And he said, every time I tell you something good, I'm going to ring this cowbell. And that's a writer-downer. I say it, write it down, it's important. And he said, and if you notice, I'm going to be drinking some beer. And if you dare fall asleep while I'm talking, I'm going to throw a beer can at you and wake you up. And I mean, this guy, he was amazing. Just really amazing, all the stuff that he was. His message was, if I can do it, you can do it. And then, of course, I had lunch with him, and we had a bunch of people sitting around the table, and just mesmerized. And then the second day was more of the same. And I came back to New Albany, Indiana, and just started doing everything that Earl talked about. And I mean, within really in a year or 2 years' time, things turned around completely. And there would be no profitable dentist. Like you said, Howard, you wouldn't be on the national stage if it had not been for the plug we gave you in the newsletter. There would be no profitable dentist without Earl Eastep. And, he's an amazing guy. He came to our 20th year reunion, similar down in Destin. But that's how it all started. Steve Parker and I were talking before the call that, back then it was so easy to get, big crowds at seminars. But that was before 9/11. It was easy to travel, and there weren't a lot of people doing seminars.
These younger kids, they weren't there 30 years ago, and back then it was extremely taboo to talk about profitable dentistry. I mean, it was like nobody wanted to hear a physician or a dentist talk about money. And back then you could, you're in Indiana near you're near two distilleries. You're near Maker's Mark. That's what, about an hour's from your house.
Right.
And in Tennessee, Jack Daniels, back then you could drink Maker's Mark and Jack Daniels, but you go to jail if you smoke marijuana. Well, now marijuana is legal in most states.
Right.
And back then, people who talked about profitable dentistry, like you and Earl, it was just so taboo. People couldn't even believe that you could have that conversation. And now that it's 30 years later and they're graduating with $400,000 or $500,000 of student loans, now it's complete necessity. If they come out of school and they don't get profitable quick, life's going to be very difficult.
And Howard, after we did that first seminar, and I got the letter somewhere, Travis and I got this scathing letter from the ADA. How dare you put profitable and dentist in the same sentence? And I mean, they were really, really upset about that event down in Florida. And like you say, it's turned around so much now, where these kids are coming out of school with so much debt that they have to get profitable quick.
Well, what advice would you give them? Because, it's like most of these dental schools are now up to $70,000 to $100,000 a year tuition, and that doesn't include supplies, room and board, car, insurance, all that stuff like that. What is your advice to these kids? Because the dental schools aren't going to change their ways, because the dental school deans tell me, look, every time we raise our tuition $10,000 a year, we get no decrease in qualified applicants. So
Right.
the tuition is completely inelastic to demand. These kids want to be, and veterinarian is the craziest because vets don't make any money, and they got like 4 times as many people per seat applying to vet school as med school or dent school, and they're never. I mean, graduating a veterinarian with that kind of debt, I mean, they don't. It's just insane. The return on investment is not there. But what advice would you give these kids walking out of school $500,000 in debt and they're 25 years old?
Well, you know what I would do, Howard, and I think you had him on one of your podcasts, Tony Robbins.
Right.
Tony, and we've done a couple seminars with him, and I've got to know him fairly well. But he says, find somebody who's getting the results you want and copy what they're doing. So one of the things I did when I was, trying to turn things around, I would hear about a really good practice, say in Columbus, Ohio. And I'd call the guy and say, and back then they were all guys. There were almost no female dentists. That's changed tremendously. And I'd say, hey, I hear you got a really good practice. Do you mind if I come up and watch you for a day? And the really good ones would say, no, I don't mind. The ones that, were doing crappy dentistry and whatever, they'd say, no, I really don't want you to come in my office. So what I would do, I would, talk to the reps from the Patterson and the Bencos and say, what clients do you have who are really doing well, who have great practices? And I would just go and, and watch these people and learn from them because, every office I went to, some offices you learn just a little bit, one or two things, but then other practices you learn so many things. And, I think that kind of, Tony talks about it cuts the learning curve, and it really does. Rather than try to learn all this stuff on your own, which is never going to happen. And the other thing I learned, don't bother going to anybody in your own town because they're so protective and, they don't want you to see what they're doing and, vice versa. So find people out of town, like, I'm right across the river from Louisville, Kentucky. So there were, several people in Louisville that I would visit and, just kind of pick their brain all day long.
You and I have seen the DSO rodeo twice now, because when I got out of school in 87, what year did you get out of school?
74.
74. I got out in 87. So we saw Orthodontic Centers of America do these rollouts. They made it to the New York Stock Exchange, had $1 billion valuation, and then they imploded. There was a dozen on NASDAQ, and they all imploded. Then they're gone. For a decade. Now they're all back, but Wall Street doesn't forget the lesson. Wall Street wouldn't touch any of these guys because they're just a rollout. They get a bunch of debt and they buy a bunch of offices, and the only way they grow their sales is to grow their debt sheet. And so by the time they get to $100 million in sales or $100 million in debt, but a lot of people think the sky's falling and that these DSOs are going to take over all of dentistry, and someday we're going to be like the pharmacists working at Walgreens or CVS. What's your opinion of the current state of DSOs, and what do you think their impact is having on dentistry, and how big do you think they'll get, and all that stuff?
Well, that's something I think Steve could talk a little bit more about, but one of the things I see, Howard, you talked about these kids coming out of school with, all this massive debt. And there's a lot of people, particularly the women, because as the class is 50% women now. What I've read is their average career is only 7 years because, they start having babies and they don't want to practice full time. So I think that a lot of the DSOs, it's a good fit for particularly women dentists, but a lot of other dentists. I had a associate who ended up going to one of those. But I think it serves a need. If your career is only going to be 7 years, and you want to come back into dentistry just a couple days a week, then that's a good option. And the pay is pretty decent. What are you hearing?
Well, when you say their career is only 7 years, I know a lot of, because they're going to have babies. Actually, the opposite is also true. I know a lot of women dentists where their husband quit their job and is playing Mr. Mom and raising the kids. I think the women can retire early because women always marry with their brain. They always marry. Women dentists always marry a dentist, a physician, a lawyer. They always have a great job, and most of them marry someone who makes six figures. Whereas this stupid dentist is always going to marry the best looking girl, the best looking waitress at the Waffle House. And then he's not smart enough to realize the only reason she's going to trade her beauty for Humpty Dumpty dentist is because she's never going to work and she's going to get to spend $10,000 a month. It's a trade for and so they just don't marry right. I mean, I always tell dentists, if you're on a date and they bring the bill, if she doesn't even try to pay, I mean, if you want to pay, that's cool. But if she doesn't even try, I mean, you're a fool and your money will always part. And I mean, so many women are enamored by physicians, dentists, and lawyers that they're going to be, high social status, high income, never work, drive a Range Rover. And the women dentists just, they're not dumb. The women dentists assume that all men are useless. And if you're going to marry one, they better make $10,000 a month, or they're not even going to entertain the offer. And that's
Howard, I should have talked to you before my last marriage.
But and every time I lecture in dental school, I tell those boys, I say, dude, the smartest decision you could ever make in dental school is marry one of these women in the class. Just send a generic email to every single one of them, make it a group email, and they all know who you are. It's the best decision. And a lot of these dental schools have hygiene schools too. So, I mean, They should just, that's great advice. But they marry so ridiculously. In fact,
Yeah.
Greg Stanley, who's a common friend of ours, he lives up the street. He always, when you ask him, well, when do dentists retire? And he says, well, if you've never been divorced, you could retire early. But at one divorce, you're looking at 65. Two divorces, you're looking at 75. And 3 divorces, you'll die at the chair.
That's true.
So I just retweeted. You're at the Propel Dentist is at Excel in Dentistry, EXCEL in Dentistry. I just retweeted that to my 23,000 homies. Thank you so much for following me on Twitter at Howard Farran. And the tweet is tpdlive.com/live-event. So you're having a big seminar tomorrow in Destin, Florida, and you're also going to live stream it. Orlando.
Right.
Sorry, I went to Destin. I got to tell you my funniest Destin story. First time I ever went there, this is before cell phones, MapQuest, all that stuff. I fly into that airport. I rent a car, and I asked the Hertz lady, I said, and I told her the address of it, and I kid you not, you couldn't make this story up. She says, oh, that's so easy. She goes, just go on that highway, go down 7 Waffle Houses, turn right on the 7th Waffle House, and it's right there. I'm like, what? 7 Waffle Houses? She wasn't even kidding. There was like a Waffle House every mile all the way to Destin.
Well, Fort Walton Beach is, they call it the Redneck Riviera. And that's all it is. And then you go down all this, like I say, past all the Waffle Houses, and then lo and behold, there's this beautiful resort down there that nobody's heard of.
Yeah, Destin, Florida. So you decide to have it in Orlando. We just had our county meeting in Orlando. So how's the meeting looking? Who you got speaking? Are you excited about it?
Yeah, Steve, let me bring you in on that because you've been working more with the speakers than I have.
Yeah, it's and probably a little bit like you, Howard. Orlando is just an easy place to get in and out of. One of the chief complaints we had with Destin, it's a beautiful place, but no easy flights in and out. You have to leave a day early. There are 2 flights from, wherever you live. And so we decided to make it easier for people who want to attend in person. And then the other thing we did was, you're right, we're going to live stream it all day tomorrow. This is kind of a new thing. We've talked in the past, and a lot of people who put on seminars, we all have the same situation. It's just hard to get people to show up and put in the time and travel when CE is so readily available. So what we're going to try and do is stream this thing starting at 7:30 in the morning. And we have a lot of, so Friday is a lot of mostly practice management speakers. Dr. Craig Spodak from Delray Beach, Florida, is our keynote. If you haven't heard him, you really need to hear his story about his practice. Just an amazing thing he's done. He has really embraced the millennials as employees, which, I know you've done a few podcasts on that, and it's a topic that a lot of dentists have a hard time getting their mind around right now. We've got Laura Hatch, Elijah Desmond, Gary Cady, Gary Takis. This is Dr. Brady Frank. This is all day Friday. So, and I just saw your tweet. I appreciate it. All you have to do is really register, and then you'll start getting notifications all day tomorrow that'll say, the next speaker is up. You click it, log in. You can watch it for an hour. You have to log in before 10 minutes. Before 10 minutes is up. So, and then you'll get live CE. So when you're finished, it'll know you were there, and a CE certificate will bounce back to you in your email, and you'll say, wow, that was easy, and I got to hear a great speaker. So, and then Saturday, if you happen to be in Orlando, we'd love to have you. We still have, believe it or not, people signing up today to attend. We have people flying in at like the last minute. But it's at the Hyatt Regency Orlando. And, part of what we've done here is taken all these speakers, put them together in more of a presentation area. And, you can come hang out with them. Rather than just sitting in a room watching them speak and they leave, you get to hang out with all these speakers. We have about 6, I think it might be 7, podcasters recording their live podcast at the event. And then Saturday is mostly clinical if you want to come. We won't live stream it, but you can view it afterwards. but those will be more clinical presentations. And then we're doing what we call a digital trade show. So all the vendors there are about 30 plus vendors who will do a podcast live video on Facebook Live, and you'll be able to see them, see what they have at the show. It's about 20 minutes, so they'll kind of do their pitch. They'll give you a special, just as if you went, so you can get a discount or a break on whatever their product is. And so what we're really trying to do is take what Woody started all those years ago and really put it in the new media and the new, mostly social media, and really deal with and address the realities of today. There's just so much CE. I mean, think about the CE that's available today, literally today, as there was 30 years ago, and how easy it is to get. So we're really trying to take advantage of those things and bring it to a much larger audience. We are, from the numbers we're expecting, we'll be north of probably 60,000 views tomorrow. So that's a lot of dentists all over the world.
Is that like a world's record for dentists? Or?
It will be, yes. We've already broken the record of registrations and sign-ups for a dental event online or streaming. So we'll know when we're done. I would like to hit a lot bigger number, but we think it's going to at least be north of 60,000 views tomorrow.
Damn. Hey, but where do they go to do all this? What's the best website to find out all the information?
You can go to tpdlive.com and register. And really what registration does is put you in our queue for CE. We have to know who you are and identify you according to the ADA.
So it's tpdlive.com?
Yes, like theprofitabledentistlive.com, tpdlive.com. And that gets you registered, which the ADA requires that we do. And again, you have to be logged in. You have to, for every hour, you have to do 50 minutes. So you have to be logged in, and it'll know that. It'll know that you logged in. So if you log in, if we start at, if the first session is 8 and you log in at 8:08 and you are logged in through it, you'll get a CE certificate for each course you watch. There are 8 courses tomorrow.
And how much is that?
That's free.
The tplive.com?
Yeah, that's free all day tomorrow.
So the whole thing's free?
You can watch it all day live tomorrow for free.
Damn. Very interesting thing is, the fact that these millennials are coming out of dental school with $500,000 in debt, you look at the data, 38% of millennials still live with their parents. Because one way to, it's really affecting the housing market. A lot of these millennials can't qualify for a home, and it's having a serious material impact on housing. And so taking CE online is easier, faster. I mean, Dentaltown has 400 plus courses, and most of them are the price of a cab fare from a airport to a hotel. So, these weekend courses that are $3,000 or $4,000 at all these famous institutes, that can be very, very cost prohibited when you're trying to make a student loan payment on $500,000 of debt. So that's that's amazing. Gosh darn, that is really cool.
Well, I think you also see a difference in the type of CE, and you really alluded to it earlier. I've been in this business. I'm a business guy. I just happen to own a lot of businesses in the dental industry. And, 15 years ago, I would go in and do some consulting with dentists. My background's management and finance. So I would get in and kind of get under the hood, and they never wanted anybody to know that a guy like me was helping them out. They would be embarrassed. And, I would, at the time I owned some dental labs, and I would have great big bills, great big AR from a great dentist. And so we would kind of talk, and I couldn't understand why they couldn't pay their bills. So that's how I got engaged and involved in it. But they would not want to share with anybody that I was helping them with simple things. I mean, how to collect your AR. You pick up the phone and you call. That's how you collect your AR. And today, 15 years later, they're proud to say, hey, I have this person mentoring me, this person helping me. I work with this company. And I think the type of CE has gone from less clinical to more nuts and bolts realization and understanding that they're an entrepreneur. They're running a business. and they can be the best dentist they could ever be, on their way to bankruptcy court if they don't understand how to pay their taxes and pay their employees and fund equipment and all the things that it takes to run their business. So one of the things we've also done is we changed this and called it the Practice Owners Conference. And that's really to just address the fact that that's where a lot of the struggle in dentistry is. It's not necessarily the clinical. It's in the fact that I'm a practice owner, when really I just want to be the dentist. So one of the things we're trying to do is recognize, and that's why we split it up Friday and Saturday, recognize that All Day Friday is really about running your business and ideas to help you build your dental business, your practice. And then Saturday being the clinical is more about, I'm still a dentist and I still love my patients and I still like to work. So that's the way why we've divided it up kind of like that.
There's one reoccurring theme in my 1,000 podcasts. I've done it every day for 1,000 days. It's coming up on 3 years, that I can never figure out why dentists always hesitate on hiring a consultant. And you're saying, it's embarrassing, it's ego, they didn't want you to tell anybody, which is the only proven proven return on investment. This is how you get out of student loan debt and practice debt, is you get your dental office poised for growth, you get your house in order, and they just don't do it. But they'll buy a $150,000 chairside milling. They'll buy a $87,000 millennial laser from the Lanap. They'll buy a $100,000 CBCT. I mean, they'll buy any single thing except what they need. And I tell them, if your house in order, when they say they want to buy a chairside milling machine or a laser, I say, well, great. Can you write a check for it? You're going to have to assume debt and lease it for 5 years. If your house is in order, you can just buy a Porsche or a cabin or a laser. But when you're borrowing money for chairside milling, lasers, and all that, and you're a doctor in the richest country in the world, how do you not see the problem with that? But what you're saying is it might be just be they didn't want to tell anybody that you were helping them. So you think it's just ego and pride?
I think so. I think, and I've been fortunate to look under the hood of a lot of dental practices, and that's a lot of it. The holes they find themselves in are just silly holes. You're right. I can't tell you how many times, the whole chairside milling is another podcast, but I can't tell you how many times I've had dentists show me this. They're proud of this new thing, and their nut is about $3,500 a month, and then they're buying a $53 block for every crown that they make, so it's $4,000 or $5,000 a month, and their lab bill was only $2,200. And they're only getting out of 80% of that. It's always struck me that math. I mean, I don't care who you are or what you learned or where you went to school. At some point, you got to be laying in bed at night and say, "Wait a minute, $4,000's going out, and all I'm really doing is saving $2,000 or $1,500 of a lab bill." Those are the simple things. Or AR is probably the second most biggest thing that I see. Number one is way too many people, way too much overhead. And second is AR. And I'll go into an office that has 8 or 9 or 10 months worth of receivables. They've been working for free, and they're carrying it themselves. So you kind of take a systematic approach to that, but they don't know, nobody ever gets around to it. So they're embarrassed to say it's that big, and it's gotten that way.
You make a good point, and Howard asked me about that. One of the things I was doing was going to other dental offices, but even back when I had no money, I had consultants come in, and Bill Blatchford, Kathy Jameson, and I had 7 or 8 consultants come in, back in the early years. So you make a point about doing that.
Yeah, they're trained in one thing.
What's really funny is when you talk to consultants, they don't read the economic stuff from the ADA economist Marco. What's his name? Marco Vukovic? Vujicic. I'm so sorry, Marco, that I'm always butchering your name. But anyway, he has the best data in economics. I mean, hell, he used to work at the World Health Organization, the United Nations. I mean, I can't believe the ADA got like the greatest healthcare economist ever. And he shows with data, sample size, the average general dentist is doing about $750 and taking home $174,000 a year. But you talk to any dental consultant and say, well, what does the average dentist collect and take home? They always say, I'd say, probably about $1.2 million, and they take home $350,000. Yeah. And that's exactly because everybody that uses consultants, like the greatest office I've ever seen, and just managed everything. He's had a different consultant every 3 or 4 years to this day, and he's 10 years older than me. He's 65, and he says, "Well, I've just never given a consultant 30, 40, $50,000 where I didn't get all that back." And then
Right.
some in that year, these dentists, they just don't do it. Now, I'm all for Cerax and chairside lasers and E4Ds and app if that's your love. I mean, if that's your love and that's your passion and that makes you want to run a red light on the way to work, knock yourself out. But if you're buying that for a business decision, you're incredibly flawed
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah.
It's
We're
not.
together. We're together on that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's what makes you love dentistry, place it in, like people ask me all the time. They say, "Well, do you think I should specialize? Do you think that's a good business decision?" I go, "Dude, you don't only want to specialize if that's what you want to do. I mean, you're only going to live one time, and you're going to graduate at 25, and you're going to do this for 30 years to 65. I hope I can do it till I'm 75. I hope I got 20 more years in this. And but my gosh, that should be a matters of the heart. And when it's matters of the heart, you don't ask some short, fat, bald dentist in Phoenix what you should do. I mean, these are matters of the heart. That's like someone saying, "Should I marry my girlfriend?" I mean, that's a matter of the heart. If you want to specialize lasers, place implants, do Invisalign, all that stuff, but that's totally separate than the business of dentistry.
Right.
And you've already made a decision to use $500,000 of other people's money, and you got debt that you can't default on. How corrupt is that? I mean, it's in the Constitution that we don't have debtors' prisons and bankruptcy is a right, but the good government in bed with the banks, they can't even bankrupt out of that. So if you've come this far, you've got to make some good business decisions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always tell people your dental degree and your dental license just means you're a good dentist. Has no bearing on you being a good practice owner. That is a whole different can of worms. So and I think that has really come to light. I'll tell you, when I speak at dental schools or I speak to students or young dentists, they get that. I think, guys, a generation or two older, I think, Howard, we're about a year apart. They don't get that. They think, "Oh, I'm a dentist, so, I'm going to retire well." And it hasn't worked out. So, but I think young dentists see themselves in a very much more entrepreneurial light than just a generation ago.
So, Woody, last time I think I was talking to you, you had a basketball goal in your garage, and it was inside your garage, wasn't it?
Right.
I can still remember watching your boy shooting baskets inside the garage.
Right.
How old is he now?
He is 31. He got his MBA from Kelley Business School at Indiana University, and I couldn't talk him into dentistry. He's working for a big pharmacy company.
Nice. Whenever people talk about leadership, I want to get your opinion because I know you're a huge Bobby Knight fan.
Yes.
And he was brutally fired. I think it's because he threw a chair out in the state on the court or anything. But I always tell people that you don't know what it's like to lead 5 college boys on a field. I mean, on basketball. I mean, leadership for a boys' college basketball team might be very different than leadership in a dental office where all your employees are women. Do you think Bobby Knight was a good leader, or do you think he was rightfully should have been fired? And talk about leadership.
Well, he should have been fired. He was a great leader. Of course, he was at West Point before he came to Indiana University.
Right.
So, there you go. But I don't know. He would. One of the first things he did, he took them all to the barber shop and told them they had to, dress in the sport coat and tie when they traveled. And I went to his very first game, and I can't remember. I had a strain of, I don't know how many games I went to before I missed one. It was a blinding snowstorm, and they wouldn't let us drive into Bloomington. But yeah, he's a great leader and a very intelligent guy, very respected. And you look at some of the teams now where the players are doing drugs and all kind of other crazy stuff. It's just a different world. But he had a lot of respect. And I think that's something with dentists. If your staff doesn't respect you, then it's pretty tough to have a good practice.
Well, what advice do you give them? Because it's so much to do with leadership, but they're coming out of school. They're 25.
Right.
They're working at a DSO or their associate for a year or two, and they and as far as the DSO, I just tell these kids every day that if that's your best idea, I just want to see the evidence. Let's go back 5 years. I want to see the evidence of all these kids who went and got jobs at DSOs, and they're still there and they love it. Because the bottom line is, the average associate job is 1 year to 2, and it's the same on Wall Street. I mean, Apple's average millennial doesn't even work there 12 months, and Facebook holds them the longest. And they only hold them 2 years, and that's with stock options and everything. So if working for someone else for 30 years was just all that, show me these people. I haven't met them. All I meet is associates in private practice and in DSOs. They quit every year. I talked to a dentist in Scottsdale yesterday. She's had her own practice for 10 years, but in the 6 years before that, she had 8 different associate jobs in 6 years. She hated them all. That's all you hear. So then they opened up their office, and they got to be a leader. And what advice would you give a young dentist to be a leader?
Well, I think, number one, you have to set the example. You can't show up 20 minutes late, with patients waiting. And, because if you do, then, Bambi, Dawn, or Fawn's going to show up late too, because the doctor does, and must be okay to do that. I think communication is big. When I was in practice, we met every morning. We had a morning huddle. We looked at today's schedule. Where can we work somebody in? What's the status of this patient? And I think communication is really key, because I've been in a lot of offices where nobody talks. They just show up, they do their job. And I think communication is really essential. And the other thing is feedback, because when I was doing a lot of consulting, I would go into practice and I would sit down with the doctor and kind of hear that side of the story. Then the doctor would hop in his leased BMW and go to the country club for lunch. And where you really learn about the practice is having lunch with the staff people. And I'd say, what's going on? I said, doctor's leasing a new BMW and he belongs to the country club. And, well, what you don't know is this. And I would get so many good ideas from the staff people, and then I would bring it back to the doctor and I said, okay, dude, you think you're really doing well, but here's what I'm hearing on the other side of it. And Earl Eastep did a whole book on that. It's called From the Other Side of the Chair. Mm-hmm. And I think we still have copies of that.
We do, yeah.
And that was a really good book. One other thing we didn't mention, and Steve, I don't want this to be a commercial, but you and I have talked about it. One of the ways I got started in lecturing, I wrote a book back in the 80s called The Winning Combination. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of tidbits from all these little trips that other dental offices. And as far as I know, and somebody can correct me that's listening, it's the more sales of that book than any other practice management book ever.
Yeah.
We sold north of 85,000 copies at $35 a copy. So, I mean,
and what was the name of it?
It's called The Winning Combination. And Steve is trying to talk me into doing an updated version of it, which I'll probably do.
Yeah.
And by today's standards, it's kind of like, you're like, what's the big deal? But, back then, before the internet and all the courses we had. So, yeah, we're probably going to re-release The Winning Combination. And then Earl Eastep, his big book was The Obvious Secret. And, of course, the obvious secret is people can't make a decision when they're stressed. So when he backed away from the patients and let the staff, do the selling, everything turned around. And then he had 2 assistants, Mary Paroline and somebody. And they thought, well, Eastep, if he can write a book, we can write a book. And they wrote one called The Other Side of the Chair, which is it's a fantastic read because it lets you see the other side of the chair, what they see and what they're picking up on. And what we as doctors do that we shouldn't be doing.
Well,
And
speaking
Steve,
of that chair, my staff is it's 8:45 in Phoenix. I got a 9 o'clock appointment, and in that chair, and my staff is telling me if I don't shut up and get off my free stupid daily podcast show hobby, it's my favorite hobby. I mean, I don't golf. My favorite hobby is talking to other dental homies. I just love my podcast. I'm the only one who's listened to every episode, and I'm the only one who loves it the most. But hey, seriously, Woody, thank you so much for all that you've done for me personally, for so many dentists. You were the pioneer. Steve, I did a whole hour with Steve Parker. He was episode 881. And we'll get this out today because you got that live event tomorrow. I hope we'll push that out and hope you get some more streamers from it and set all kinds of records. But hey, on that note, I got to see a patient. You guys, you got to catch a plane to Orlando. Woody, thank you so much. Woody Oakes, Steve Parker, theprofitabledentist.com. Go to tpdlive.com. And Ryan, thank you so much for putting that out today. I just ruined your day. And I hope you guys have a rocking hot day.
okay, thank you, Howard.
Thank you.
Next time, Howard.